Hello, my dear guest, to the final and seventh day of the Seven Tales. And this story is of a wrathful king long ago, who never hesitated to cause judgment upon all he conquered. Let us start the story with the mighty king on his throne, listening to the messenger that arrived for peace. And before any thoughts were given, the messenger pulled out knives, throwing them at the king, with the king dodging the blades in time. Drawing his sword, angered deeply, went and marched to the assassin. As the assassin tried to pull another blade, the king, with one mighty swing, beheaded the fool. Having the king's bloodlust not be quenched, commanded his general to get the army ready for battle, and his armor prepared to be put on. So with the orders given, the general did so. And after a while, the king had put on his armor and got on his horse, leading the entire army to the enemy's kingdom, raising his sword, and with a swift downward swipe of his weapon, had his catapulters release with flaming firebrands to the castle, sending in archers to take out the one archers on the wall, distracted by the firebrand barrage. He then sent his full force to climb the wall to open the gate. As for when the gate was open, he charged in with his royal cavalry forces into the castle, commanding all to show no mercy, with the king and his men slaughtering and swinging their blades at anyone they see, trampling all who get in their way, till arriving to the enemy's king. The mighty king himself walked up to him, and without hesitation beheaded the king, taking the head outside, raising it high, and with a mighty yell like a lion's roar, feeling glorious to the victory. And for when the flames of war continued on, the king left the embered city to return to his home, resting for the day. As the next weeks to come, another kingdom came to attack the mighty king's land, causing the king to be enraged and meet with the attacking forces with blood-boiling rage to slaughter the army that had the nerve to strike upon the mighty king's home, with all who survived from the enemy's side, and gave them public executions for all to see, their heads on pikes, with many more cheers to be heard, savoring the moment as for months to go by. Threats of many kingdoms from his brutality angered the king even further, and saying if they wish to perish by a god, then they shall grant their wish. With the one kingdom fighting alone against all odds, with the angered and vengeful king at the helm, began their conquest, slaughtering with the other kingdoms given no quarter, with burning of homes and screams from soldiers, or even innocents, with the king enjoying the chaos and conquering of lands, with his sword of wrath, to the foolish kingdom's threats to try and take his own, killing without remorse. Eventually, as the passing of time. The mighty king ruled all, sitting on his throne over the many dead he brought to their demise, ruling with a iron fist, till one day a shadowy being arrived to the kingdom's gate. As many soldiers did try and halt the figure, but were simply dealt with, decaying away as rotting flesh. As the figure continued on forward to the kingdom, spreading shadow and darkness through every step, sending all soldiers to rot and decay, making way to the king's throne room. Having the king command his general, with his royal guard that was left, to strike at the being, enraged by the insolence, believing that this creature could go against a god, and having to believe such foolishness from the king, going against such an unbeatable force, the shadowy figure went and raised a hand to cause the final king's defenses to be crushed through the force of the air itself, bleeding bloody orbs of flesh, walking closer to the king, as the man himself drew his sword, angered to his core, for a final attack, yelling to how he is a god and will live forever, colliding his blade to the being of shadow, with the shadowy figure catching the blade between two of his fingers, and says, "Time to hear the screams of those thou slaughtered in wrathful smite." A mask of a smiling face appeared, the shadow, a figure, and when darkness surrounded the room and them both, the being tossed the king back to his throne, and using the sword to impale the king to it. As the figure backed away, having screams of agony and blaming the king for the many innocents he killed, with the king to drown it out, yelling only in anger to how they deserved it. As the screams get louder, decayed, innocent people, the king and his men slain, come out of the veil of darkness and went to pull the king in the shadows, with him bashing away with all his strength until many undead knights stabbed into the king, making it easier for the souls who were pulling him to drag him to the nothingness where no light cannot be seen. So, that was the final tale of the 7. And I hoped you enjoyed them all, and hope to see you all again. And do remember to keep that wonderful smile on your face.